Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, October the 1st, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm host most Will Buchanan on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know, we do try to watch our language on this show, however words do fly, and also there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. Aside from that, welcome. So, what to do on this weekend? Also, first and foremost, for those that are in the path of hurricane or we're in the path of hurricane, hopefully you guys are safe. You're safe, you're secure, or if you hunker down during a storm, you're able to pick up the pieces and go from there. But hopefully the casualty level from this hurricane will be very low, or I'd like to prefer the number 0 if possible. But hopefully you guys who are in that hurricane path be safe, as well as, like I said, take care of each other because, like I said, Mother Nature is undefeated. That being said, guys, we are going to move forward a little bit with a little bit of the news we have for this weekend, starting off with something that should have happened with the January 6th Commission involving one Supreme Court justice's wife, who I still believe should be charged with espionage.
Investigation into the January 6th Capitol riot and Ginny Thomas, a conservative activist and wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, testifying before the House committee amid questions about her role in efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Our chief Washington correspondent, John Carl, has more. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Michael. Ginny Thomas was aggressively pushing efforts to challenge the election at the very time that Donald Trump was vowing to go to the Supreme Court to overturn Joe Biden's election victory. In one of many text messages that she sent after the election to then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, she called the election the greatest heist in our history. She testified for some 4 hours and made it clear that she still believes the thoroughly disproven lie that the election was stolen. She also downplayed her efforts and said that she never talked about what she was doing with her husband, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. She made an opening statement to the committee, which has been obtained by ABC News, and she said, in part, "It is laughable for anyone who knows my husband to think I could influence his jurisprudence. The man is independent and stubborn with strong character traits of independence and integrity." But again, she made it clear that even now, 2 years after the election, she believes that it was rigged and stolen a lot.
All right, John Carl, for us. Thanks.
Okay, so again, Ginny Thomas. Hey, I don't want to talk about anybody's facial features, but yeesh. That being said, if we take that out of it, guys, she's sitting there saying that, oh, yes, my husband is Supreme Court Justice Uncle Ruckus, otherwise known as Clarence Thomas, and that he doesn't talk about any of these things with me. There's no bearance on, because I'm the wife of a Supreme Court Justice, that I would have no bearance on an election that I believe was definitely stolen, that I texted individuals in higher ranking positions to look into this, and that in no way or form did I try to help subvert or overthrow the electoral count for then President-elect Joe Biden. You can trust me. I'm sorry, Ginny Thomas. No, we can't trust you. Because if there's anything the January 6th Commission has looked at, text messages, that itself is incriminating. That yes, you can, above all else, sit there and believe that you believe the election was stolen. You and every tinfoil failure-in-chief cult member will always believe the election was stolen. Even though this most recent presidential election we had was the safest election on record. If there was any finding faults of faulty votes, things of that nature, it was found mostly for Republicans. Keep in mind, Republicans have been touting this whole thing of keeping elections safe since they lost the election, since they lost a special election in Georgia. since they lost everything, since they lost every election where they sat there and dismissed mail-in voting. At the time, we were voting during the pandemic, which kept a lot of us inside. Republicans are the only party out there sitting there screaming, elections are at stake. We have to do better. Republicans are the ones who are at the state level changing laws, making it harder for people to vote, specifically targeting minorities. Don't believe me? Look at Tennessee, look at Georgia, look at Alabama, look at Texas, look at Florida. They are all changing the laws, how to vote, how many people can actually do mail-in voting. They are literally restructuring the field in their favor. And in heavily conservative states, they can do that. Laws get passed a lot faster when you have a lot of your own people on the same team. That being said, Ginny Thomas doesn't believe that she's not an influence. Not to take one from Toby Negui, but stop the cap. You have influence. Anybody in politics that's associated with a senator, a representative, a House Majority Leader, House Minority Speaker, Senate Majority Leader, whether you're the AG, whether you're the Secretary of State, whether you're the White House Chief of Staff, whatever you're associated with, those are areas of power. In the same sense as a Supreme Court Justice, that again is an area of power. The same woman who is the husband of Uncle Ruckus is no different than the man who is married to Ketanji Brown Jackson. Yes, your wife and also Uncle Ruckus are in very high places of power, and trust and believe, some Mayo believe to actually use that to her advantage. As Guinea went ahead and texted at the time, House Minority Leader saying, hey, we need to do something about this. Her text message was sent out there. So yes, she's going to testify. Because in my mind, you helped to overturn or try to overturn the election. In my mind, you're no different than the January 6th nationalist nationalists disguising themselves as patriots. You're no different than them. The only difference is they actually did physical violence upon Capitol police officers and actually tried to storm the Senate, versus you deciding to use your area of power because of who you're married to and the access that you have with certain politicians. You try to backdoor your way in. In some cases, that's much worse. So yes, do I think Ginny Thomas should be included in this? Absolutely. Because again, for all those, it's like I said, it's completely okay to sit there and believe what you want about the election. Because no matter what you believe, it happened. Trump's no longer president. Get over it. As many of the failure-in-chief cult members have told us to do. When Trump's president now, you're just going to have to get over it. Okay. He's no longer president. Your turn. That's all I'm saying. But again, when it comes to the failure-in-chief, I always sat there and said it best. It's a cult. It really, truly is a cult. There's no other way I can say it. But moving right along, guys, I did want to get to this next story just because we saw this coming. This is referring to the Biden administration. And of course, just literally over 2 weeks ago, Biden had announced his student loan plan, his student loan debt forgiveness plan, to keep to his promise of at least clearing out $10,000 for every student. Because even in Biden's world, somehow he still thinks that we can somehow pay back our student loans off. Somehow. But $10,000 off, $20,000 if you actually have a Pell Grant, which for a lot of people, it's a lot of relief. I even said during the midweek review of this podcast that the congressional budget, the CBO, or the Congressional Budget Office, sat there and said that Biden's student loan reduction forgiveness plan would cost somewhere in the area of $400 billion, which a lot of people are going, $400 billion? Yes. Do you want to know what the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq cost us? 3 times that amount. No, we gotta keep going. 7 times that amount. 7 times that amount at $400 billion. Which, if you really compare that to the wars in Iraq, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that we paid on credit cards, that's a small price to pay to help a lot of Americans get some relief from student loan debt. Because That is the entire reason for it. Well, before I get too sidetracked, we knew this was coming. We knew the Republicans, of course, was against the plan, sat there and said that they shouldn't put this on the American taxpayer. American taxpayers should be paying no money, even though we've canceled out billions of dollars in PPP loans for businesses that could pay it back, and Republicans didn't bat an eye. Well, unfortunately, there is a lawsuit now. Because of this lawsuit that was put out, Biden's administration is scaling back some things because of not one, but two lawsuits, one in Indiana and one in Washington, D.C. Because of these lawsuits, they are now scaling back a few changes. On Thursday, the Department of Education did update the instructions for who qualifies for the debt forgiveness program for up to $20,000 for some Americans. The part that you really should be concerned about is this part right here. The new guidance excludes people who took out federal loans that, while they were granted by the government, were technically handled by private banks. As of Thursday, those borrowers with Perkins loans and federal family education loans, or FFELs, can no longer qualify for the forgiveness program. Now, I'm going to be honest. Speaking as those that are under that umbrella, speaking for those that are under the umbrella of student loans, student loan debts, first and foremost, that's bullshit. It is. Because you know why? The reason why they did that is the reason that's showing at the bottom. That the change was made the same day as a lawsuit that was filed by 6 Republican-led states targeting the very part of that program. The complaint argues that the debt cancellation would decrease revenue from interest payments for the private banks who manage those loans. Let me say it again. The change was made. The reason why the change was made because of lawsuits filed by 6 Republican-led states. And the argument is that debt cancellation would decrease revenue from interest payments for the private banks who manage those loans. So let's get one thing clear. The argument that these 6 states are making in one of 2 lawsuits, the other lawsuits by an individual lawyer out of Indiana, but this lawsuit was because private banks won't recoup interest payments. Do you see the problem here? That's the argument. Republicans, for all their talk of championing small business, for all their talk of less government, more personal involvement, for all their talk of family values and all the other bullshit they spew, that right there, to me, is the clearest sign of what Republicans stand for. The Republican Party stands for whoever buys and pays for them. In this case, private banks. Even though private banks would get their money back, but they don't want just the money back. You know what they want? Especially if it was forgiven. If forgiven means that the bank can write it off. If the government is taking out at least 10 to 20 of it, that means that the government is going to be paying anywhere from 10 to 20, depending on your situation, back to whoever holds the loan. The same thing about it is like, no, we want the interest payments too. If that is not the biggest sign of greed in America, I don't know what is. I don't, because that's the argument. We can't get the interest payments from these student loan accounts, and I'm thinking to myself, it is amazing to me how student loans are so. They are so insulated from everything. Like, first and foremost, number one, student loans are like taxes. They stick with you until you die, unless you somehow pay them off. You pay them off, cool. You've done the impossible. You've done damn near the impossible. I can't say the impossible because a lot of people pay off their student loans. You've done damn near the impossible, especially if you don't have the means, people with money, or opportunities to actually get you out of this. But for the craziest part out of that change was because they can get the extra money that nearly 770,000 borrowers will now be affected by the debt cancellation policy. And I'm just thinking to myself, in this pandemic era, where the minimum wage is still $7.29 an hour, that some jobs out there have the audacity to only pay you $14 to $15 an hour, when companies are making billion-dollar profits, when companies with PPP loans are getting forgiven $1 million, sometimes thousands, sometimes $1 million PPP loans are being forgiven. And I don't see the Republicans going, wait a minute, you need to pay for that. You took out the loan, you need to pay for it. Republicans, when it comes to PPP loans, are dead effing silent. But when the American people need a break, need some relief, now all of a sudden, oh no, you guys need to pay that. It just goes to show you where they stand. Now, of course, these lawsuits did cause Biden to change, and I wish he didn't. I mean, if you're going to stick with what you say, stick with what you say. I mean, because you can, under the reconciliation with the 50-50 Senate, he probably could push it through. He probably could get Manchin and Sinema to sign on, probably one of the two, because I can't see both of them signing on. But he can at least get that done. But I also sat there and said Biden could have just wrote off the entire student loan debt and nobody would complain. I also said he could do that too. Now, for the better life of me, it's the fact that because of this change because we are so very close. After October, we are basically in midterm season, and Democrats have everything to gain. Republicans have nothing to lose, but Republicans are betting on their fan base to literally be ignorant with a case of amnesia. Democrats are going to have to own up to everything that they've done, which really, in the hindsight of things, is not a lot. But in this case, you sat there and wanted to help with student loan debt. Cool. Follow through. But we'll follow that story as it comes along with those two lawsuits that are developing. But speaking of the failure in chief, unfortunately, we cannot avoid him because only in Florida, before Hurricane Ian made his jump, that a Florida judge spares Trump from having to back up claims of planted evidence during the Mar-a-Lago raid. Yes, I cannot make this up. That a judge in Florida, and if you're wondering, yes, if you're wondering, a Trump-appointed judge ruled Thursday that Trump does not have to submit a sworn statement identifying any evidence he believes the FBI may have planted when the raid happened last month. I'm trying to figure out how he's able to get away with that. But then again, I thought about it. I laughed the first time I read that sentence. I'm like, how the frack did he get away with that? Trump appointed judge, Florida. For all those people that are wondering, you realize the last two rulings for Trump in Trump's favor have been in Florida. Number one, appointing a special master to look over documents to determine what was confidential and non-confidential. Number two, now he can sit there and say the whole entire time, the FBI planted evidence, but you don't have to submit a sworn statement saying that. So that, you know what it tells me? That tells me that he can do all the slander he wants, but no accountability, which seems to be Trump's MO for a lot of things. No accountability. But again, we shouldn't be surprised by this because this was the directive from the special master that he had to submit a sworn statement. So it's amazing. This is how Trump legal judo works. Trump somehow, let me try from again. Trump, first off, he somehow still has money to hire these lawyers, which is still amazing to me. But at the same time, he can litigate. He can drag this out in court for months. That's his usual MO. He'll drag it out until the other side is either tapped out of money or just flat out gives up or just wants to settle. That's what he's used to. He's used to going this route because he knows if the other side doesn't blink, he wins. But this time it's the federal government. So it amazes me so that because of this statement, I wonder what else will be turned around, because now it seems like every time the special master says something, it can be overturned or overruled or reversed. Because trust and believe, you don't think that Trump's lawyers, who, by the way, are probably going to get the paycheck of a lifetime after billing these hours, it just makes you wonder what's going to take. I said it before. Once you actually got into the federal crosshairs, especially when they started saying the words like Espionage Act, Espionage Act is about as close to being a traitor as humanly possible. That thing comes with penalty of lifetime imprisonment or death. And Trump having documents, top secret documents that he no longer had clearance for because he was no longer failure in chief, took them from the White House. They tried to get them back. The government asked for them back. He wouldn't get them back. So a lot of I's got dotted and T's got crossed to make sure everything was everything was above suspicion to raid, or I should say, to just go back to the government to go back and get their property. But it just amazes you so that when you hear top secret clearance documents that Trump has, how is he not in jail already? That's all I'm saying. How is he not in jail already? But again, we'll follow that story as it comes along. Moving on, guys. You ever been, it's like, I don't get law enforcement. I don't. Especially for this case of Travis Cole. Travis Cole, as you can see in the picture I'm about to show, that is him down there. And as you can see, he's restrained. As you can see, he's handcuffed. Well, 2 years ago, because of this picture, there was a man that actually got him with a stun gun. And so now, 2 years later, he's filing a lawsuit. He's filing a lawsuit against Boulder County law enforcement because, again, he was restrained. He was restrained, put in a chair, surrounded by multiple officers, and then one particular officer decided to deploy the stun gun, Christopher Mecca. Now, the thing about this is that this story is a little on the old side. Keep in mind that, of course, Christopher Mecca did resign because he was about to be terminated. Was arrested on one misdemeanor count of third degree assault and official misconduct. He was convicted back in 2021 by a jury of his peers and sentenced to probation. And of course, now the lawsuit is being filed by the man in the picture, and rightly so. Because again, if you're restrained and if you're surrounded, and for some odd reason, they still believe that additional force is necessary. This is the reason why I keep saying on this podcast, law enforcement training needs a makeover badly. It needs to have mental health screenings. It needs to have more education required. It needs to have more training than just half a year, because there's no explanation why that officer tased that black man, although he was restrained. Now, I will say this: you want to stop mess like this. Although I have to give this to a Killer Mike, because he said this first. Attack the money. Anytime there's a police action that leads to a damaged individual or loss of life, attack the pension. Attack the pension. The pension has to pay out to the families. Now, if that was set up to be a law, watch how quickly none of that happens anymore. Because simple fact of the matter is, when you start messing with nest eggs of individuals, either they ship out or they ship up. And maybe that's what we need to do, because law enforcement is getting really, 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 really too comfortable with actions like these if all they can do is resign, get a slap on the wrist, and they're done. Because who's not to say they just can't go to a different city and state and pick right back up where they left off? You think a cop in my hometown of Nashville does something, can't go all the way out to Iowa and be a deputy out there? Yeah, they can. No problem. But still, again, many of the things that needs to be handled, really and truly. But that's how I feel about law enforcement. But there is actually some good news besides our feel-good news segment, y'all. Congress, again, in the middle of trying to keep the government funded. As we talked about on Wednesday, we're doing talks because they had a deadline come this Friday to either get a bill passed, otherwise the government will shut down again. Well, thankfully, they were able to get a deal worked out with hours to spare, as you can tell by the heading, because the Senate did vote on it, which again led to the House on Friday voting on it today. And yesterday. As of yesterday, the House did vote to go ahead and push it to Biden's desk to keep Congress running. And trust me, in the lieu of actual payments still being put out, pandemic assistance, things of that nature, you want the government to keep running badly. But here's the thing about this bill, because you guys remember on Wednesday I sat there and said Joe Biden did remove the pipeline portion of it, which was to expedite permissions for drilling oil sites or pipelines in the U.S. There's a lot of wildlife, restricted area, ocean area areas to where they cannot drill. Manchin was trying to push to get that green tape lifted. However, because it was in the bill, it did threaten progressives who would not actually sign on for the bill. So Manchin, blinking for the first time during this entire session, took it out in order to help this bill get passed. I wish he felt that way about the America First plan, or I wish he felt that way about increasing our minimum wage. I wish he felt that way about the Voting Rights Act. I wish he felt that way about the John Lewis Act. I wish he felt that way about codifying women's rights. But we all know Manchin is a conflicted party of interest just because of where he's from. He just doesn't say it that much because, well, it's not Texas. That's all I'm saying. But again, but they did actually avoid a government shutdown, which means the bill is going to Biden's desk and will be signed by Monday to keep the government running. Now, the last story I got, guys, before we get to our feel-good segment, again, I am not surprised by this. As I said before, we are just now, first day of October. We are not too far off from November, and that means that the November elections are coming. That being said, the federal government has sat there and said that we now offer training to election workers to deal with potential violence at polls. Yes, that is a thing. Now, everybody's ever voted before knows that you go to your election depending on your area, or you do early voting like I do. I like the early vote; it just makes a lot more sense. But anyway, if you decide to go election day on the day thereof, and for a lot of people, yes, the lines are long. Sometimes it feels like the election poll workers are just enjoying their time, I guess you could say, not really helpful. And then you get in there, press a few buttons, get a sticker that says I voted, I'm out. But the biggest part of the thing is waiting. And at the same time, you have to worry about, of course, because of voting laws, that certain things have to be set up. Like, again, certain signs have to be set up at least 100 feet from the polling station. You cannot engage with any political discussions as long as you're in the line. Stuff like that, which we all should be good with. But keep in mind, we are now in the failure in Trump cult era. And there's going to be some people in these lines that are going to do exactly that. Disrupt, dismay with their arguments. Well, things ran better under Trump. You know that, right? Things run better under Trump. MAGA, 2026. 7. That's not making that up. That's how they sound. But anyway, the federal board is offering training to help de-escalate situations, and I'm just like, cool, nothing wrong with that. As a poll worker, you're going to run into a lot of people who are going to be frustrated, a little fidgety, a little ready to go home, especially as these more seasoned generations come up. They're wanting everything quick. They was like, hey, I want to vote. I want to get out of here, and that be the end of it. You can't really argue that. But again, the biggest threat out there is the cults, is literally the failure in chief cults. You get, because don't get me wrong, Trump had pointed out two election poll workers in his defamation. Those election poll workers had death threats. Think about that. All they were doing was their job, and because Trump pointed them out, they became targets. The same thing can almost happen at your local polling or voting area. But adding de-escalation tactics to it does help. I'm not mad about it, but I would say this: could you please also offer that to law enforcement and make that a mandatory class? That would be helpful. But as I said before, guys, this election is going to be, well, even though it's midterms. And right now, Republicans are just trying to disrupt the 50-50 majority with Madam Vice President Harris as the tiebreaker. Republicans are trying to break that up. At the same time, we should be very concerned, because Democrats don't have it in the bag yet. I thought for a second Democrats would have it in the bag the moment the Republicans turned around and sat there and said, "Oh, we want to take down Roe versus Wade." And I'm thinking to myself, who's ever the campaign strategist for the GOP has failed to realize women voting makes a wonderfully large, influential demographic. And you just told a bunch of women, including ones who will turn 18 just in time to vote this year, that their bodies are not their own. All Democrats have to sit there and say is, hey, you give us majority in the House and in the Senate, we will codify Roe versus Wade. Or we could decriminalize marijuana, or we could raise the minimum wage, or we could do A, B, and C. But this is what happens when you have a centrist president like Biden, who is more conservative than actual liberal. But it is going to be an amazing time in a few months from now. Not just talking about stuff that's coming out, but just the midterm election itself. Because trust and believe, what happens in November is going to change the way we look at it for the next couple of years. That's all I'm saying. But we're going to go and move on to our feel-good segment, guys. Usually on the Frack guy here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes we use faith in humanity. But hey, it's the weekend. Hopefully it's nice and sunny where you're out. And if you're in Hurricane Ian's path, again, please be safe, evacuate if you can, and hunker down if you can't. But we do want to leave you guys on some good vibrations and hopefully do just that, because I do love Cheech Marin. But Cheech Marin has done something that's so influential for his people and inspiring that it cannot help to be shared. Check it out.
Spend enough time exploring how Chicano icon Cheech Marin sees art, and you're liable to get your mind blown.
Whoa, this is tripping me out.
Yeah, I just discovered these two white doves.
Today, the Cheech and Chong counterculture comedian turned actor,
is that a joint, man?
Turned art collector is helping redefine how the fine art world sees the work of contemporary Latinos by donating what's believed to be the largest private Chicano art collection in the world.
I always get asked, so what are the determination of the paintings you pick? And for a lot of them, they have to haunt me, and I have to dream about them.
And at a new museum in Riverside, California, nicknamed the Cheech, his dreams are now adorning gallery walls in a way that has eluded the community for decades.
Why aren't these guys, these painters, men and women, and they're not in galleries, they're certainly not in museums? Why aren't they getting any shelf space? My only intention was to get everybody to see it.
And now the art speaks for itself.
It always spoke for itself, but you have to get to the place where it can speak.
For visitors of all ages,
I was blown away by some of the art.
This museum, to me, feels like home. It feels like the vibrant colors in our house.
You see these paintings.
Art, heritage, and color, reflecting a community, finally on full display for all to see. Gotti Schwartz.
And again, I just thought that was pretty cool because, like I said, art needs to be shared regardless of your nationality. And I just thought that was pretty cool to actually see someone who was one of my favorite actors, not just because of Up the Smoke and Nash Bridges, but again, see Chicano art and just wants to share it for the world to see. I thought that was pretty cool. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. I do want to thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Before I do get out of here, I do want to do some shameless plugging as usual. I want to start off on Buddy Vaughn, Big BZA Dot on Facebook. Well, I should say A. Lamont Westwood on Facebook, Big BZA Dot on socials. Definitely check him out, especially his TikTok and what Big BZA is thinking, as well as beats that he is producing on the daily. But definitely check him out at Big BZA Dot on all socials. Aside from me, guys, you can find me on everywhere at BlackFox447. I usually post reviews of everything I watch, some gym stuff because I do a couple push-ups. Also, at the same time, guys, I am all about, really changing how we dialogue with each other. I mean, say hello, say, how you doing? How's your mama? Stuff like that. We've been cooped up for so long and had our own walls put up that we just forgot how we can be decent with each other. So just simply be decent. Also, check up on your people, check up on your loved ones, because you don't know what everybody's going through. Just saying hi or hello can do more than just make their day. You might save a life in the process. At the same time, it takes very little energy to be nice. It takes 100% energy of your energy to be a dick. So don't be a dick. Simple as that. Of course, the ticker you see at the bottom, guys, let me make that just a little bit bigger. If you copy and paste that into your browser, it'll take you to my link tree that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack got here, Get Bit, and of course, off this podcast. Definitely like, share, and subscribe, and let people know about that as we try to make those things bigger. Aside from that, guys, if you are going to be out and about, I would highly suggest this. If you are going to be out and about, hot. No, we're not going to be hot. No, we're not going to be hot. Winter's coming. I cannot wait. But if you are going to be out and about among a large group of people, keep in mind, guys, the coronavirus and all its many variants are still out there. Please wear a mask in high traffic areas. Please protect yourself. If you don't feel good, please stay home. The more you protect yourselves, the more you protect others, and that's how we'll get past this pandemic. Now, the last thing I'll say about how the Frack got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to break the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information like, you know, make up your own mind for yourself. We do better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first black 4-star military general in the armed forces. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up with your paycheck? Why do we elect different politicians, but still the same old story? And most importantly, how the Frack got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this. Peace.